There we go. We are ready.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I teach the Monday, Wednesday class this semester. I've actually taught this 477 and 475 probably about 7 times, just as an adjunct when we have faculty that are either on sabbatical or we're short faculty like we were this year doing it. But so we talked about communication, and today we're going to just talk about your formal report writing. You have 2 formal reports due in the class. The first one is your individual one. The second one will be your team one. Yesterday I was asked one question in particular, is how much in industry, how much time or how many reports do I write? And a formal report is always written at the end of every project that's done. And so that might be 12 to 13 in a year, okay, of these formals. Now we're only doing 7 to 10 pages. A formal report in industry might be on the order of 30 to 50 pages. One project I was sent to North Carolina for 7 months. That formal report was well over 1,000 pages. So you'll get, just depending on the assignments that you'll have a lot of opportunities to write. The other question that was asked was, how important is writing, or communication, really, as Dr. Hedigan mentioned. In my opinion, and it's only my opinion, I think it is the most important asset you can have as an engineer. More important than your work ethic, more important than your brains. You're all 1,000 times smarter than I am, okay? But it's your ability to communicate with your peers, your bosses, your subordinates that will determine your success and wherever you go. So today we're just going to talk about the formal report. In the formal reports, there are these sections. We start with a transmittal letter, and we'll talk about that in a minute. The title page. Then there's front material with a table of contents, list of illustrations, or list of figures, list of tables, followed by an executive summary. Then the introduction that contains your objective of the work, the background, experimental procedures, and so on and so forth, okay? Oh, by the way, this is all on the website. I forgot to say, so it's all on the 477 website, this presentation. If you're doing a bigger report, the one we did, you'll sometimes split results into one section and discussion into a separate section, conclusions into its own section, recommendations into its own section. But for these, what I call short formal reports, they're usually lumped together, okay? After the recommendations, you have your back material, which may or may not include acknowledgments. It must include any reference that you used in your theory section or anywhere in the report, as well as the appendix or appendices, depending on how you choose to do it. One thing you'll find is that we're not going to go into the technical things like you must indent a paragraph a half an inch and you must do this, that, and the other. The way I wrote for DuPont was different than the way I wrote for Conoco, which was different than the way I wrote for reaction engineering. So wherever you go work, they will have a template that you'll follow and how you do the mechanics. But what you really want to do is be able to give the essence and the technical meat of what you're doing. Okay, transmittal letter is the last section written of a report. And it's very simple. It's got the date, to whom. In the subject, it's a succinct description of the project. And I don't know who's doing batch distillation, so I'll just use you as a scapegoat. It's not batch distillation for the subject. Okay, it's not freeze-dried. It's what were you asked to do. Because when we talk about who reads the transmittal letter, you'll find that it's more people will read the transmittal letter than ever will read your report. Okay? And so you need to have in that subject heading what you were asked to do. Okay? 2 paragraphs, 1 paragraph on what was done and how it was done, the objective and how it was done. 1 paragraph on the conclusions and the recommendations. And that's it in the signature. Everybody signs it in a group. Okay, if it's a group project. But the reason it's written last is because you write your report, you take a Reader's Digest version of that, write the executive summary, And now you take a Reader's Digest version of the executive summary to come up with a transmittal letter. Because it is only 2 paragraphs, it always is just 1 page. Okay, and if you put it on company logo, letterhead, that takes up a header, it takes up a footer, so you're talking, an 11-inch page, you'll be talking 7 inches of typing, and that's it. The title page is very simple, just a descriptive title, to whom, from whom, and the date. Okay, again, this may or may not be used if you want to in these short reports. The front material, if you do include it, those are paginated with Roman numerals, beginning with the title page being Roman numeral 1, but it is not, doesn't have a number on it, but it's just 1, so that the table of contents would be 2, Roman numeral 2, and if you do list of illustrations, then that would be 3. And you can do either a list of figures and a list of tables, or a list of illustrations, which covers them both. Should you choose to do illustrations, you put all the figures together and all the tables together. You don't put them in how they occur in the report, with figure, then table 1, and down to figure 2, figure 3, then table 2. All figures together and all tables together. Roman numerals are used all the way up to the executive summary, and that becomes page 1 in the report. The executive summary, as I mentioned, is the second to the last section written, because it's a Reader's Digest of everything you've done. Okay, it's 1 page. Use bullet points on there. It summarizes, as I mentioned, everything. There have been times, depending on the project and that, where a table or a figure is used in an executive summary. Not very often. Okay, if it is, it can be one that's back in the body of the report, but it must be given a different number. So they use ES1 for executive summary. So when you do the list of figures, you would have ES1. It would have the exact same title as perhaps figure 5 in the report, but it would be a different number. Okay, again, it's difficult to start with the executive summary. You need to have your report written, and then you summarize it in that section. The body of the report, use a header and footer if you choose to, but you need to have a page number. Paginate the document. Now here's about the only time we get into some formality things. Most of it's done in 12 point. Don't use anything smaller than 11 point. Okay, and double space. The reason we do the double space, or 1.5 spacing, is the narrowest, is that allows Dr. Hedegren to put comments in the lines. Okay, when you get in industry, you'll usually do it in single space, sometimes 1.5 space, never double spaced. Use heading and subheadings. Doesn't matter what kind you want to use, but they should follow in a logical order. Word has them all built in there for you. You can use them, but be consistent. That's the main thing. Make sure we refer to figures and tables before they appear in the document. Okay, so that you mention it, and then it follows after that. Sometimes you'll have 2 or 3 figures in a row. That's okay. Just once they're all mentioned, you can put them right next to each other. Back to back to back. Paragraphs in the text. Each paragraph is organized around a key sentence, which it always comes in either the first or second sentence of a paragraph. And the rest of that paragraph discusses, supports that key topic that you're meaning to bring up. Okay. In long reports, big reports, you use these key sentences to actually make the outline for the entire report. So it's much easier to do after you have an outline of what you want to talk about. In technical writing, third person is preferred. Okay, and what is third person?
They.
Who?
They.
He, she, they. Yeah. Okay. It, he, she, they. Okay. Third person tends to let you go into the passive voice more often. Okay. Not that anything's wrong with that, but just that usually technical writing is done that way. Okay. Certainly in third person rather than I. Be consistent in verb tense usage. Everything that's been done is done. It's in the past. Okay? If you're talking about things you're doing now, you're looking at the data, you're analyzing this, you're doing something that's in the present, and there's very little in the future, and the only really thing could be your recommendation down the road. I would recommend that we do this in the future, something like that. I've seen paragraphs that have all three verb tenses in all the same paragraph. Okay, that's highly, highly unlikely. Okay, read carefully what you're writing. What happens when you write is you read things that aren't there. You're thinking of things, and it doesn't come out on the paper exactly the same way. So what you write is not necessarily what you thought you wrote. Okay, figures have captions, and they're below the figure, underneath the figure. Label the axes correctly with units on there. Use a common scale for figures where you're trying to compare things. If you're comparing this experiment or this run with this run, you need to have them in a common scale so that it's easy to compare. Make sure you note that in Excel anyway, that you have to format the number of digits you want showing in your X and Y coordinates. Because otherwise, every time you hit a whole number like 0.10, if everything's in hundreds, you hit 0.1, it'll just put 0.1. And so you'll have things off. So you need to go format, you want 2 digits. Significant figures, this really is an issue on tables. Because you guys all have calculators and computers up the wazooie, you can get a number to 12 significant or 12 digits, only 2 of which are significant. Okay, back in my day, this was never an issue. But don't put a number with 10 digits in it in a table. Because even I know you didn't calculate it to 10 significant figures. Okay, so there's no use putting them on there just because the calculator says they're there. Make the figures clear. Pay attention to the symbols. Now, when you print in color, it's a lot easier. But any copies that are made are done in black and white. And then all of a sudden, line thicknesses get blurred. If I have a blue and a green color with the same symbol, you can't tell the difference. So make sure your symbols are different for the different data, as well as lines, however you dash them or something. It's a good idea just to print out. If you're going to print your whole report in color, great. Print it out once in black and white so you can see what your figures really look like when they make copies. Be consistent. Whatever you choose to do is great. Just make it consistent through the whole report. Tables, the titles are above the table now as opposed to below in figures. Make sure you align the columns in your table. It's not uncommon to see the column heading aligned to the left and the data are all aligned to the right. Okay? Make it consistent. Whatever you choose to do, just make it consistent. Don't forget the units, and they're usually, if the entire table is one set of units, you can put it in the title. If columns are in different units, make sure the column heading has the units in it. Significant figures, again, I mentioned that. Just be reasonable and think about what you're writing in there. If you call out anything or you have an asterisk in your table, those go right after the table before any other text or anything like that. You can just put them in. Equations or reactions, they're numbered consecutively, and the number is always on the right-hand side. Usually it's in parentheses. It doesn't have to be. However you choose to do it, just make it consistent. Anytime you use an equation, the first time you need to identify all the variables in it. And from then on, anytime you use that same variable, it doesn't need to be defined again. But the variables need to be defined the first time. You use the same size font in the equations and reactions as you do in the text, with the exception of some very long ones. You can usually go down 1 point smaller. So if you're doing everything in 12 point, you can go down 11. If you're doing it in 11 point, you can go down to 10. But that's it. Yes, sir?
Is it necessary to introduce the equation before you write it? Like it is for a table or a figure?
No. You can say something is defined as an equation 1, and then equation 1 shows up below it. But you don't like put equation 1 sitting there and then below that equation write as shown above in equation 1. Okay, so you do reference it, so to speak, beforehand, but it doesn't, not significantly or anything like that. Remember that if you're referring to a specific equation or reaction, it's capitalized. If you're referring to just equations, as shown in the equations below, then it's not. But a specific one, equation 1 or 2 or something like that is. Results and discussion. By far, well, certainly in the body of the report, this is the most important meat of the whole report, to be real about it. When you do your data analysis, a good data analysis includes the results that you have, and so that I could go along, or Dr. Hedergren in your case could go along and duplicate, or he could make a decision based on it. But all you've done is you've provided the data. Okay, so that's a good one. A better analysis includes summarizing what the data mean. Okay, using graphs, figures, tables, whatever you want to do. Okay, but the best one is where you synthesize the data so that you have made an analysis of what the results are, that you discuss the significance of those results with respect to what you were asked to do, and then you provide some recommendations based on the analysis of your data. The bottom line, and I don't know if you can see it, but you want Dr. Hedergren, when he reads your report and he gets to your analysis of your data on your experiment, you want him to think, feel, or do something differently based on what you've done, what you've written. So he wants to feel, hey, they understand that. I would go and do what they said to do. Okay? If he's the one who has to come up with all the meaning for the data, you're in a world of hurt. Okay? Even I know that. Okay, back material. Again, acknowledgments are optional, but if you do include it, if you do put in acknowledgments, and you have Dr. Hedergren, don't forget to include Mike on it. Now, he didn't tell me to put that in, just so you know, but you should. Certainly my class does. References are required. Anytime you use a reference, a technical reference, you should have it in there. Your formatting for that, again, there's no set format because depending on where you go work, they'll have the format they want you to use. So just make it consistent, whatever you choose to do. The appendix or appendices, depending on how you want to do it, there are separate subsections. So you can have Appendix A, B, C, D, or you can have Appendix 1, Appendix 2, Appendix 3, however you choose to do. But you have separate sections where you go into more detail on the theory if it's not contained in the body of the report. Okay, a lot of these experiments have a lot of theory, and you don't have that much room in your 7 to 10 pages, so you put in the appendix. So that's where that would come in. Raw data and reduced data. I don't know. I think Dr. Hedergren's the same. Because you have a massive amount of raw data, I just require a URL address where I can go find the raw data. Anytime you analyzed it, you reduced it, you plotted it, that should show up in the appendix. But just pure raw data, just a URL address where I can go find it. Sample calculations, statistical analysis, and any other supporting documentation will go in the appendix in a separate subsection. Note that you number equations, figures, tables, and that A1 if it's appendix A or B1 and so on, so they're numbered again differently. But the appendix should look professionally done. It shouldn't be just a mishmash of papers stuck in. Okay, bottom line. From your report, the reader should know who, what, where, when, why, and how, and be able to completely duplicate your experiment and come up with the same results that you did within your confidence level, okay, from that report. And there's no such thing as good writing. There's only good rewriting. It's incredibly difficult to write one time, the first time, and have something ready to go to be turned in to Dr. Hedergren. Okay, so a suggestion is, and I know I was a student, many years ago, and I never did it, okay, so I'll be up front. You finish the report the day before, you sleep on it, and then the day it's due, you read it, and you just read the words, not what you are thinking about. You're just reading the words that are there, and you'll find a lot of errors in the way things are written. Any questions on report writing?
I'll just say one other thing that's helped me a lot is just reading it out loud to myself. Because when I just skim it, just eyeball, I tend to miss a lot.
Anything else?
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Let's
good.
thank Dr. Hardy. You can tell he's had a lot of experience, so thank you so much for coming and talking to the class.